This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For September 1st, 2023, it's the best sounding podcast in higher ed AV. This is the AV SuperFriends. Broadcasting live to tape from coast to coast, easternmost to westernmost, northernmost to southernmost, gate post to hitching post. I'm your local host who can boast the most milquetoast and utmost humility. I'm Chris Dector, and it's time for yet another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. And let's say hello to today's panel of AV SuperFriends, not a single one of whom was recently named to yet another self-congratulatory list of industry insiders. Today, I'm joined by Jamie Reinhart, a national solutions designer from Kansas City, a future usability officer from Corvallis, Oregon, Marc Kolowazinski, a product creative synergist from Greensboro, North Carolina, Larry Darling, and a lead paradigm consultant from Southern Kentucky, Justin Rexing.
That's paradigm.
Those are shorter titles,
guys.
It's paradigm.
So, Justin, you're changing yours to a lead paradigm consultant.
Correct.
Kentucky.
Just rolls off the tongue.
Can you please, make that? Can you shorten that a little bit? Just be like an LDAP con, an LDAP con. How about that?
Lead
That actually sounds like it fits.
It's very IT.
All right. Well, on today's show, we're going to discuss the
Let's
challenges with room systems and the. You want to what? All right. On today's show, we're going to discuss the challenges with room systems and our propensity to destroy expensive equipment. But first, we're not doing the news. We have a letter that we're going to read because that's what we do.
You've got me.
So, submission to the mailbag. This came from, I've not heard back. I reached out to say, do you want to be credited? Do you want to be left anonymous? I did not hear back. So we will name and shame this person and tell you their home address and where you can find them. I'm kidding. So this came from a listener.
Twitter.
We'll just say a listener. This was not on Twitter. This was an actual email.
But we only have four, so we have to narrow down.
I was catching up on my podcast listening while cutting the lawn. I really enjoyed episode 35 of On Topic. And this is the point where you all try to remember what the hell we talked about in episode 35.
What does that mean?
What did we talk about?
And there's the problem. All right. So there were so many good points made about engaging with faculty and faculty champions. It was the faculty engagement episode. So,
yes.
After 35 plus years of working in university AV, so many of these points rang true to me. There were also, however, 2 points which I believe were off base. The first was a comment that budget tells us what we're going to do. If it's true that the budget tells you what to do with your AV designs, then why does the university have you? You are in control of what happens with the budget, not vice versa. If you believe it's time to make some adjustments to what you call your standard classroom, stand up and make those adjustments. Sell those points to the final decision makers. So I'm going to pause there because that was point one. And then the second question is kind of a different topic.
Model. Yeah.
Well, you are a very special budgeting model here. What I don't understand about this comment, and this is me, Chris, now speaking. What I don't understand about this is I don't recall ever saying that like budget dictates AV designs, and except for the larger sense of a standard classroom does not have an infinite number. So I don't know, thoughts on that?
Nope.
Riveting discussion.
Just
jump in.
A budget.
You talk over me in the intro, but when there's an actual question, you don't. So
it's a variable budget. I mean, it has to have a limit. So, I mean, at WKU, we work on everyone else's money. It's their money. There is no central fund for anything. So the budget dictates AV design is absolutely true on our campus.
So let me put a rail on this put rails around this because otherwise we'll go off for 30 minutes on this. He refers specifically, or she, it, person, they, thems, refers specifically to standard classrooms. So on a standard classroom design package, whatever, we all have those. If someone says, Justin, I need 13 classrooms, you know what that involves.
Right.
So my question, I guess maybe their question is, why is the budget dictating the system? Unless I'm misunderstanding, it's like, well, it's not infinite. We're not going to like just go hog wild with LED floors and 3D caves and shit. So
I mean,
let me jump in the middle on this little grenade. Let me get here. So we've had people that are maybe misinformed that will reach out to our organization, Academic Technology, and say, hey, we want to do a classroom. Just whatever your standard package is, that's what we want in here. and I will give them the work. And here it is. Here's your budget for that. Here's your scope of work. And they're like, whoa, that's way more than we anticipated right up front. Right. They're like, well, maybe, is there any way you can do it cheaper? Right now we're in this like negotiation process, and it's like, well, no, now you're asking me to deviate from my standard so that it becomes more cost effective for you. So you're actually not asking for my standard.
Correct.
So we've gone wrong by the assumption that the standard was affordable in their eyes. Right. And so, and usually I fall into this like problem when I have office administrators trying to be like the victor here because they think they're doing the work of the greater good by saving money and being like frugal.
I'm going to save money.
Like, I understand if I took $15,000 out of your pocket, office administrator, it would seem expensive. But you have asked me, what is the standard? I've given you that. And then you seem shocked because $15,000 may be a lot of money to you. And that's true. However, at an enterprise level, that's what we're talking about. And what you're actually asking me for is not, put stuff in here and get a classroom. You're asking, I want you to provide a system so I can call you when it doesn't seem to be working correctly. And that is the
and that by the way, that is a critical point.
If you want to call me. Mm-hmm.
Yes, when you get to a certain point. In fact, I was having this conversation with someone the other day about like it's that inevitable negotiation. How low can we go on a system? And they get to a certain point where I will not go lower because now it's more difficult to support. And now my guys, every time they go over there, they'd have to relearn this goofball tchotchke town widget fest thing held together with duct tape, baling wire, hopes and dreams. And I don't want to deal with that. And then from the standpoint of the people using the room, the teachers and the instructors and the students, that experience may be subpar at best, and probably just a generally a worse place to teach and learn. So why? And then they're going to say, well, why did we spend $15,000 on this? So
yeah, our main problem, similar to Mark's, is just the definition of standard, right? So they ask us, just a standard room. And what traditionally people on our campus mean is, I need a computer, no sound, and a projector and one cable. That's their definition of a standard room. And they say, we just want a standard room. We're like, okay, yeah, we could do that. Mark, like you said, $15,000, and they're shocked. And that's when we have to customize and keep going down, which that means budget dictates design. Unfortunately,
I'll be completely honest. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where I have a certain number of rooms I'm expected to have complete each year, and I have a budget that they give me to do those spaces, and I can push for more budget, but at the end of the day, there are certain features that are not part of my standard that ideally I would probably like to have. Like, I'd like to have program speakers in everywhere, and I'd like to have multiple wireless mics and things like that, just to add some flexibility. PTZs back of the room in every room, just to give the flexibility, but I can't do that. There's compromises that I had to achieve just to address the number of rooms that I'm expected to do with the budget.
Yeah. And somebody's probably asking, like, well, are you just putting too much stuff in there, right? Should you not have a more affordable option as a standard option? And maybe so. And I think that was kind of the spirit of the ask I had with Don Merritt when we talked to him, is that, like, who is driving the bus on what are the core capabilities? When you say I want a standard room, I'm trying to deliver you the core capabilities of the common learning space that we are here to support. It looks like this, it smells like this, it operates like this. And I think it all comes back to the ask, is that people just don't know what the reality of that standard ask is, and they're shocked by it. And it's maybe because they're not used to this part of the industry. They're just, like I said, an office administrator, whatever it may be. No knock on them. But to me, the challenge is, how do we become better at sharing that cost, all the pieces that go into that as a project, so that people can see that menu up front? And so that we're not in this situation where we're volleying back and forth with budgets over, what's the definition of standard? What's the definition of a one-off, departmental space, GP space, all those things, because that's not what the client even wants to get into. They just want the stuff. They need a big picture and they need to hear some stuff on the wall, right? That's what we're trying to get to, but we're getting caught up in the semantics of this whole thing.
Unfortunately, solving that problem is somewhat marketing and trying to get your voice out there about what value you bring to the university, right? So if you're quoting really expensive systems and everybody sees you as a used car salesman, and you don't explain yourself and have a marketing campaign and have IT's back, and the higher ups at the university, if they don't understand what that value is, you're going to get nowhere with those conversations. So it's not just marketing, it's a holistic adoption process of what like just mosaic at IU, right? That means something there. It doesn't mean anything at WKU. And that's what we are lacking, is just the standard definition of what certain things mean within your organization.
Well, Chris, you hit on it there.
I don't disagree, but there's a second point
right?
I want to get to here.
Yeah, go ahead.
What? Who? Huh?
Get in there.
It's not support. Well, no. I want to move on to the second point in the email because we haven't gotten to that yet. So I want to put a pin here. All right. So let me get back to the email here. The second, this is the things that were bothering him or her or them. The second was a comment along the same vein, talking about a long building cycle, and the AV that's designed at the beginning of the project will be out of date 6 years later when it's implemented. If we know that, then why is there not an AV redesign scheduled at 4 years into the project? Again, we are doing a disservice to the university by not doing what we know needs to happen. I encourage you to step forward and be the agent of change that helps advance your school's teaching spaces in the service of your faculty and students. Keep up the good work, etc. This one was probably my comment that I was talking about on that episode, and I can speak to this exactly, and I think Justin gets to experience this the first time, so the rest of us get to hear Justin enjoy this experience of working with a consultant. So consultants hired by architects in long building projects like to come up with these pie-in-the-sky designs and then walk away because that's their job. And then they come back at the end and they commission what they designed 72 years ago, and hopefully they remember what was going on. That's giving consultants short shrift, so congrats to those of you who are excellent consultants. To the rest of you, knock it off. Anyway, in this particular case, I inherited a building on year 7 of an 8-year design cycle. It was already well into plumbing and all the rest, and they were under construction, and this thing was, about ready to open. I couldn't change jack shit. That said, I got in front of every other capital project we had after that point and have completely thrown out stuff to the point where I've had consultants walk onto a job site and to do commissioning and say, oh, this is all different. I'm like, yeah, I threw all that out. Because it was not appropriate for the teaching and learning in the space. It was not appropriate for the use case. It did not match what we do on campus. It did not meet our existing standards or even that known kit of parts that we can support. And so you're 100% correct. In a long building capital project cycle where IT, that is to say us, the AV nerds, are actually involved as we should be, then yes, there are multiple design revisions that go through to ensure that by the time the building does open, it does match what you're seeing elsewhere. But that's not the case in many places who have gotten used to that habit of step one, I need a new system. Step one is call my integrator and ask them whatever they're selling this week, or a consultant is hired and they bring to the table whatever they feel like bringing to the table based on their spiffs that they're getting from manufacturers. That's real world, and I congratulate this person who did work in higher ed for many, many years and was able to actually apparently wrangle that and maintain it throughout, but that doesn't happen for everybody. All right, next.
Correct.
I feel like a lot of that is way, way too much stuff specific. When in a long-term project, I'm not getting into the stuff. I have a general approach for the stuff, and this is where having like a really good common core for infrastructure design, that's what I want. I want the infrastructure to be right in a long building project. The stuff is going to change. Whatever the design of that building is should be able to accommodate whatever endpoint is this year, next year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road. That infrastructure better align with that. If somebody's handing off a design that has boutique, unique unicorn cable on the wall, that's a problem. That's where your standards come in. What do you need to deliver your standards? It should be very cut and dry. It shouldn't be all this weird stuff.
I agreed. And I think that's usually the first step that most of us take, is that once we see that, because sometimes we don't even get invited to this meeting until the construction documents are set. I mean, the bid's already out.
100% CD. Here
and we
go.
can look at it. And
right,
we can look at it and quickly tell them, well, cancel the integrator. The pipes are good. Or, hey, immediately we need different pipe. But, I mean, that's where the most of our value comes in.
48 patch cables in one floor box, right? 48 patch cables in a single floor
and I think
box.
that's where our value really comes into it, because over a 5 or 6 year cycle, 5 or 6 years ago, we were not talking about any kind of rooms system. We weren't talking about VC everywhere. We weren't talking about a lot of the even AV over IP was less likely. You were going to use HD based. So just make sure the pipe's good. And I don't disagree with the guy says there, but I think maybe when you were on the lawnmower that was a little loud and You didn't get all of our comments because I'm pretty sure we said it.
No, I think it is acknowledging that things will change. But you should have a really good core plan to allow you to change. Like that's part, like that change should be easy, right? You should be able to do that quickly with like a really solid infrastructure plan. Maybe not Western Kentucky though. I don't know.
Larry, you've been curious.
We just saw our
watch it.
listener number drop.
We're just going to watch it burn. The consultant has full reign. They have full control. We're just going to watch from afar. That's all we can do at this point.
Justin's got his jet fuel in a can on the side. He's ready to dump.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been stuck in the position where the quote that went, or the bid that packaged, couldn't change that. I had to wait till after the bid was accepted and then work with the contractor to actually change the equipment to stuff that would actually work. And that was just the way the structure was in place. I mean, it's not always the ideal solution, but
so how did you get a hold of this? Was it an integrator that you already had a relationship with? Because the integrator that won this bid is somebody that I've never even heard of out of Louisville, and I have no contact.
Do you not have a list of approved integrators?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This was an approved integrator.
They ignored it completely. So, yeah.
I'm curious. You ran that through procurement. I'm curious. That's a procedural and a leadership issue.
Procurement, so. Yeah. Yep, it is a leadership issue.
And part of my 100%. Part of my example was I was recently hired. I was not here during the planning and development state. And by the time I got here, it was already, it was too late. Like I came in with 10 notes or pages of notes
CD
of
ready to roll,
things that won't work. Yeah. And at that point, you just have to work with the integrators and make the best of it.
There's nuance in here. How many of you buy all your stuff? And maybe hand it off to an integrator? Are you relying on your integrators to purchase and install? Or are you...
Depends on large bids they do.
How's your process? Like, because I think there is nuance here that does play into how this works. Because I know here,
if it's a capital project, then it's. Yeah. But if it's a capital project, which is what we're talking about here, I don't want to get too far off this topic.
I'm speaking of capital here.
But if it's a capital project, they are providing, as part of the bid, they provide the equipment and then install. And depending on the scope, they may also be doing programming and commissioning as well.
Historically,
we try to do
large
as much
capital
as we can
projects.
in-house.
We do all that in-house, and that goes back to our dual RFP, one RFP for parts and one RFP for labor. So we hire some labor and they work beside us to knock out these big projects. And it's super efficient because it's mainly ran by the same people internal to the university. But now that facilities has taken over, they're going to be responsible for the AV in that building. That's how it's working out.
Yeah, so we try to buy, like we try to do that purchase part of all, even capital, like whole building, 40 rooms. We'll do all that.
Yeah, you save a bunch of money. That
suffer
way.
Through that whole thing. We'll save money that way, but that also gives us the luxury to pivot to different things, right? And we can do that. Whereas, that's why my focus is really on that infrastructure.
Yes, and that was my experience, and so that I got here, and there was, like I said, the building was under construction. It opened like 7 months after I got here, so it was way too late to change that stuff. And that building is awful, and I will fix it slowly over the next 4 to 5 years. The very next one, though, it was a few months after that. It was like, hey, we need to order this stuff because we had not been involved in it at all, and that's where I was able to say, great, if I'm putting together the bill of materials, watch this and watch how I change it to what we actually wanted. Based on the infrastructure that was there, and to your point, Mark, step one was confirming that for the most part, infrastructure was in place. But I also found that by going over and working with the EC and GC directly, I was able to cheat some of that to say, I don't need 2 boxes over there for God only knows what. Can you give me a 2-inch over here instead? And the EC was like, well, that's actually cheaper for him, and he's already got his contract in. So yeah, sure. Those guys were great to work with. They were happy to do it because walls were open and we were moving stuff then, to your point, to make sure that the plumbing was correct. Yeah, but to make sure that the plumbing was correct so that we could support the systems we needed. Now, it was not 100% success, but we moved that project, I would say 80% farther to where it needed to be than the others. And we're slowly fixing the rest of the ones that were in process before I even got here. Luckily, those were early enough in design. I'm able to get in there. And now, the campus architect and facilities operation group, they're all like, okay, let's get IT involved early because otherwise they're going to come back and change a bunch of stuff afterwards anyway. So, yeah.
Yep.
I think so. In a weird way, we are all kind of pivoting and doing designs later on to make it so it all works. And so, I don't know. I think I'm always kind of interested in kind of see how the different nuance plays out between different universities, because I think that the devil's in that detail. So how you operate within your organization, who's doing what, will definitely determine what level of success you have if and when you do need to change.
And who's accountable for what? Like, we have a weird situation with us that we don't even know who's going to sign off on the AV system at this point. That's being designed by the consultant, right? So accountability is also important.
Chris will sign off on that for you. Just come through.
There we go.
I had one where I wasn't even involved early on. They wanted me to sign off on it. I was like, no, not doing that.
No, I'm not signing that.
that one's a contentious one.
Hell no.
So.
You just have random students sign off on it. Just pick them up. You come look at this. Does this meet your criteria? Let them go through it.
Hey, Steve, come here. Sign this.
How's this look?
Sure.
All right. Well, let's close this, take a quick break, come back. We're going to talk about the challenges in implementing room systems that don't always seem to play nice with established institutional, industry, and even our own internal standards.
As many of you know, the Super Friends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So, here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
So for our first topic today, I wanted to bring this up. It's something that I think a lot of us are dealing with. A lot of us have room systems of various types. There's two, probably, I guess, large ones now. We're going to try to, here's a challenge for everybody. And we talked about this on Wednesday. We're going to try to avoid mentioning brand names.
No brands.
And that's for a couple of reasons. One, we don't want to focus on anyone in particular or single anybody out. Two, as many of us, and I think actually all of us, I think, Jamie, I'm not sure about you, but I think all the rest of us have one or two of these types of things on our campus or coming soon, or there are discussions about them.
Or 30.
Many of these discussions coming from leadership. Justin has many. He has 30 of them.
Unfortunately.
But many of these discussions are coming from leadership because those decisions have either already been made or they're down that road or this is happening regardless. So we're going to try to stay out of that and talk more about the challenges in dealing with these systems that don't seem to play nice with the AV best practices, industry standards, any of that sort of thing. They seem to do their own thing because it's easier to just roll out a little software application on a dedicated compute appliance and say, well, here you go. We're just leveraging commodity hardware and a couple of standard devices, and look, it's all USB and everything's magic, and away it goes. And unfortunately, I'm just going to say, Chris, in the general sense, my impression is
like the generic definition of that. What is the room system? What is this?
Well, let me add my comment in here. In the generic sense, I fear we are digging ourselves right back into the same hole we did with 323 codecs. And now we cut away from that. We're like, hey, look, now we're just doing it all on the computer and everything's great. And now we're right back into these room systems. So, Mark, to your question.
Okay.
We'll define a room system as a single cloud-hosted platform based on commodity PC hardware and a lot of USB transport. Is that generic enough?
And consumer,
but that computer is not. It is not a desktop. It is not a workstation of any kind. It is not providing desktop services. Right. Okay. So set that stage.
So you're right. Yes, it's required.
It
is commodity computer hardware that is working in a dedicated. Well, even that's not even true because you can still get into them. And I've had those calls where someone said somehow they managed to get to the Windows desktop and the application that was running the room somehow got minimized whatever. And this confuses people to no end because now they try to treat it like it's a regular computer.
And there's these are no UI to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just sitting there looking at the desktop like, where'd all the stuff go? Oh, my God. Yeah, that was an interesting call, by the way, to figure that one out. So anyway.
Does that all fit under the frustrations from the future topic? All those?
Maybe.
Do we already get into it? Is what I'm asking. We're already into it. I think.
It already is. The nature of them at large, it is confusing, if nothing else. Okay, but okay, there we go. Lots of computes, lots of USB. That's what I'm hearing. Right?
So I think we're all roughly in the same place where we have some of these, a department did some of them, or we tried them early on and moved away or whatever, but there's let's say limited deployment. But I think we're all now in the scenario where it's coming up enough in the conversation where it's probably going to happen whether we like it or not. And the question is, are these a viable solution for a blanket deployment, which is what everyone's pushing for because that's more licenses and more money? Or are these fine for the right application in a specialized space or in that sort of like, okay, I'm going to build a little 8-person conference room. Sure, we can do one in there. That should be fine. But in my 160 seat mini auditorium, not so much.
Yeah, I think you're in the right conversation here. There is a time and a place for everything. And I would recognize these are good solutions in the right venue.
Are they though?
But that's not what we're being asked
certain
now.
Times.
Yes.
Yeah, I think arguably there is they're trying to
benefits to it.
Everything. They're trying to be everything. And they don't want to change anything about the product to make it usable in the different avenues. A system that is made for a 6-person executives conference room is not well suited for a class. And they keep saying, oh, well, it's perfect for class because it has audio and video. No, stop. Hard stop right there. Hard stop.
But don't you want audio and video?
Has audio and video.
That's what you ask for.
My Blu-ray player on the floor back here, that has audio and
video. My squeeze box.
And I think that's where
my car has that. My car has audio and video too.
Yeah. That's where the discussions come in from that higher level, is that they're taking these contracts and these software creators are saying, this would replace everything and it'd be wonderful and you can use it to teach, but it doesn't necessarily mean you should use it in a 400 seat place. Front row. Oh, no, sorry. I mean, the row that's not front is hard to implement in a scenario like that. And I think that's that buy-in, that contractual issue that I really wish some of these software manufacturers would kind of clue it in. Even the teachers are saying, this isn't what we want in here.
Yeah. I think my concern, because I agree, like some of these systems are very interesting in the right application. But if I use them in that application and then use other more AV specified designs in my larger classrooms, those type of things, it's a different user experience. And that's the rub for me. Like have then different user experiences. So if that teacher is in a seminar room, is that going to be different than the 60-seat classroom? And that's what we've tried.
No, Larry,
tried to get away from. We've tried to have standardized across our campus.
I got it figured out for you. All you need to do, it's really easy, Larry. 2 touch panels per system.
Here we go.
You're done.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God.
No, that's not what you're doing.
Do not do that.
Too. No, I
think... Wait. All right, I'm going to derail this whole thing right now. What's the total number of user interfaces we have ever seen? The largest number of user interfaces we've ever seen in a single system?
Largest?
Because I've seen 3.
I've done 2.
I've probably seen 3.
On purpose.
I've seen 3.
Oh.
Okay. Anyone seen more than 3 things people have to go interact with because they're different systems that do different things, and we didn't.
If you're listening to this and you have more than 3 somewhere, please take a picture and send it to us. We want to see what the hell it is.
Take a picture, send it in.
We will send you a Yeti just for
that. We'll send you some
3
fun stuff. Yeah.
Yes, 3, because 2 of them were hidden inside the cabinet.
Oh, geez.
Well, that don't count.
Just because they're required to keep the device running.
No count.
But you can replicate that screen from some other screen, but you had to hide it inside the cabinet so that you only had 1 for the user, but there was 2 there that had mirrored. But yes, 3.
I'll be 100%. I'm being pushed to go eat one of these colored pills that we have here, red or blue. These are different types of room systems. And
maybe purple.
I think the ask of this is coming from the right spot. And if you zoom out a little bit, and that's not a brand thing, I'm not talking about that. What you can get from a dashboard, all that stuff, that interoperable, if you're willing to admit that maybe I'm going to have to do away with everything else I have, and I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket, and I'm only going to eat eggs from here on out, that maybe you will get that kind of unified experience. But that's a frightening proposition to have to admit that I'm going to change all these things and go down this road. But it is intriguing. And I think that's where you see that from our administrative level, that interest. Like, man, you could get this data. You can see all this. You can up, down. You can do room reporting. You can do refresh reporting. There's a lot of power there. However, it doesn't seem like it's quite ready for prime time. It's almost, but not quite there. And I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to explore it. And this will be probably, we'll revisit this, and I will have like missing fingers from being on the bleeding edge of this. So,
bleeding edge now.
Is that what this is? Bleeding
out. I'm not going to disagree that the feature set for these is from a, let's say, from a high level, from the 10,000 foot view. There's an advantage to that. Oh, I get a unified system that gives me reporting. It gives me usability. Now, again, we have people in their car driving in their car, yelling at their car stereos right now. I can do that right now by writing it for my system. I get that. Yes, we can. But you know who doesn't look at those reports except once a quarter when you export them and send them to the people upstairs? It's your leadership. It's not just IT leadership. It's for the provost's office. It's the university leadership. It's the deans of the colleges. They don't look at those reports, but if there's a central dashboard they can quickly log into and see, oh, look at the charts and graphs and all this stuff, and it's cool, and that's their sort of thing, then they like that approach. I don't disagree that there's huge value in that. I'll say that my director right now loves that sort of information. And if he could log in and see that stuff, he would be 100% on board. He also knows our frustrations with trying to shoehorn, these systems into places where they probably shouldn't be. And that's our challenge is fundamentally, these things may work for what may work for one application was not going to work for the other, which is why we don't have 43-inch TVs in every one of our classrooms. Which it's not a great example, but it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of scenario.
The problem with this dashboard is that it's not going to give you all the remote tools that you want. Like, what are we doing with this information that these pre-canned dashboards give us? Because we're not doing much from them. You log in, you're like, oh, it's blinking or it's doing something. Does that action cause us to do something? Or because, really we can't. We're not going to be looking inside the audio like we remote into a DSP if we're not using DSPs in these types of rooms, because you don't have to, because we don't. And so we see these dashboards and there's not really any power for support and control. It gives us metrics, but if you're not doing anything with those metrics, then what's the value in that data anyway?
I think you can get some deeper information and insight to the overall health of your systems through many of these. And I'm going to sound like a fanboy in this because I'm trying to find the silver lining in this cloud, that if you do it and you are bought in and can configure things the certain way, I think that data is more relevant than you may think. I'm not talking about how do I make things work for the person standing in the room. That's not what we're doing here, right? To me, it's our leadership wants real-time data. What's being used right now, by who. Identity becomes important in this conversation. By who and how much are they using it. Our refresh cycles are going to be driven more by usage, because it's going to determine where we're going to provide energy in the future. Energy is money. It's going to be where we're going to reinvest. So having a holistic picture of usage and where at and by who on campus becomes very important. Larry,
just to play devil's advocate a little bit, we are getting data, but there's that difference between the quantitative and the qualitative data. We're finding out the numbers, but we don't know how well the systems are actually being used and how effective they are. And I think that's the key difference.
Or consumed.
AV has always been about the experience, and
it is.
This is taking it away from the experience in this room and how well they function.
I don't know if it is.
If a room is being used for 8 hours every day, that doesn't mean it's a good room. That just means that maybe they have to schedule things in there because other variables or other problems. So what is that? That's what I'm saying.
This does require, it requires you to
course blind doesn't give us
rethink
much.
it. You got to rethink that experience piece. And I think these room systems are going to be able to get you more qualitative data. I think they will. When we start talking about how is AI being proliferated in there, these are going to be that vector where you're going to see that. You see it in your meetings now, right? And you see, okay, here's your recap of things. You're getting all these ancillary pieces of data you're getting. That becomes available too on that administrative back end. Like,
man, I can't even tell if the display is on or off right now. Like I can't even.
That's an opportunity for you then, Justin. Like you can do that in the dashboard. And I'm not here to sell it on you, but I'm just like I'm trying to like find the way to get to sanity in this, because it's gonna be unique. And when I'm talking, I'm not talking about the conference room. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about the learning space, the real deal, no shit classroom. Yeah. Does this belong in there? And and what does it mean? And that whole connected experience between the students in the room, the faculty in the room, the system, some of the pieces I'm looking at as beneficial, maybe I can go away from having to worry about dongles and plugins and physical connectors and all that, and do away from all of that garbage if I can have this hosted environment where people are used to that sharing piece. They're working in that cloud native thing. Like, is there an advantage to doing that? And I'm not saying put a room system within your Tron system. That's not what I'm saying. Holistically, the room system is the system.
I kind of agree.
And
like,
I think
I'm a
one of the
big
comments
fan
you
of
made
the
there, there's
ecosystem.
challenges between trying to go from what we're used to what is kind of the more cloud hosted. Larry, go ahead.
Sorry. I do think there is immense value in the ecosystem. Like, I like the overall approach. I just want to make sure before we put all our eggs in one basket, since we're talking about eggs, that the experience is there and the understanding of what constitutes a good, technically correct AV system.
Yep.
I think
it's going to take people like us being in that conversation.
That starts to worry me about some of this is I like some of the selling points. I don't think they're mature. Mm-hmm. I think some of them are absolutely selling points to sell, not necessarily selling points that are usable. What starts to concern me is we bitched and moaned and bitched and moaned and bitched and moaned for a very long time about the old codec systems. You could only use Cisco shit with Cisco. You could only use Poly with Poly. You could only use Tandberg with Tandberg. And even within the own system, right? You had to buy all those special cable heads and all this other crap. Well, we're quickly getting to a point where if we go into some of these rooms systems, you have to use... So you have the the module, the brains, sitting there running away, but then you have to use that software manufacturer's software to do anything with it. You want to share to it, you have to open up that software. If you want to, and now every user, every person must be bought into that software. And if you have devices that aren't capable or out of date, or which is notoriously terrible within our ecosystems, if it's not a one-to-one, chances are 25% of your devices can't do what you really want them to do or are not even updated. We just ran a report. We had a request. Hey, what is everybody's software update to? Because we're setting the backend server, what's the lowest acceptable software number? And all the responses were, well, for anything that's campus owned, it's 5.1.1.1.1. But we can't account for anybody's personal device, which there's a whole bunch of them out there. So I get really nervous about, again, all the eggs in the same carton, because, what if that's the same? If botulism's in there, it's everywhere.
So I think only taking an AV perspective on this, and I know that we're guilty of being an AV thing, is that too narrow-sighted? There is much more to the potential experience with these platforms that will play into that teaching and learning experience. I don't think it's smart for us to put our head in the sand and ignore that is part of the teaching and learning experience, and that we may be the only adults in the room when it comes to what's going to happen, how it works with our AV experience, but also how that hands off to that fully digital experience. That's going to fall on our laps to get that right. And so I don't think it's smart to run away from this type of concept.
No, that's where I like some of the talking points, but I don't like. Well, I'm going to get lambasted for this. We're doing AI.
Get 'em.
Awesome. I have my Samsung that's running Meta's. I have my Samsung goggles running Meta's software. And by the way, I want to kind of share this. Oh, but I have to use this giant Northwestern company's UC platform. Sorry, not compatible. Well, have we just ruined the experience because that is our experience? We've decided. That's what worries me a little bit, is that by offering these things and by offering us the sales part, those companies have been known to close their infrastructure so tightly. We've already seen them deprecate.
They haven't.
Some of their own supported hardware pieces. It's like, oh, yeah, you bought that last year. Sorry, we deprecated that already. Oh my God, you can't do that. And so we're stuck.
I have
so
seen,
I'm intrigued
the red
by
pill and the
some
blue
of
pill
it,
actually
but I'm
play
also
together. Yeah.
worried about it.
Or even if you buy their certified hardware, and this happens to us a lot, where the certified hardware connected to the system, they get an update sent out, and then, oh, that hardware doesn't work anymore. Oh, well, you're going to have to go update the firmware on all those devices. But guess what? They're USB only. And so now you got to take everything off the walls and the shelves and the ceiling and update them via USB cable from your laptop and visit every room because they pushed an update and you don't have control anymore over the hardware that they specified that are dictating your experience. I'm just saying where it is today. Now, if everything gets fixed, then we can adopt it. The problems are the problems today. That's why I have a problem with these rooms, because they cause my ass to burn all the time. It's crazy.
So I'm actually looking at it from a non-USB proliferated environment. And there are lots of changes that are actually happening. Like, that's why I've been really trying to say, okay, the AV over IP, how does that play in when you have a complete granular flat network that plays well and that interoperability is there? That changes how you can look at this scenario. Is that, can you take advantage of all of your endpoints being online and all of them being integrated into a room system, whatever that may be? I think we've seen lots of movement in interoperability, Jamie, for that. That red and the blue, they will come together and play with one another nowadays. And
I think Jamie was speaking specifically about types of hardware. If someone has specific hardware, it may not play nice with one of the other.
Hardware. The software they do, you can get them to talk to each other.
There's limited.
I'm talking like you. Back in the old days, you couldn't take a Touch 10 from Cisco and control the Polycom codec. You just couldn't do it. It wasn't going to happen. And that's what I'm talking about. And it comes back to the certified equipment that they deprecate after their agreement runs out. Those things worry me because I'm not against some of this. In fact, some of it intrigues me a lot. But, oh, man, it has such repercussions that are so negative. Look at Justin's use cases. That's what bothers me, is I don't like sinking money into a thing that eventually going to close me off to a point where I'm in a worse state than I was yesterday.
Sure. I mean,
that's what worries me.
Are you even willing
and
to
that's what my conversations with them would be.
Are you sandboxing?
I've tried it. I don't like the taste of it. These eggs are rotten.
Okay. Both types? You had the red, blue, and the red
I
and blue pill?
am interested. Yeah, I'll
too.
be honest.
I'm guilty of being interested. Yeah.
I think I will end up trying some on campus just because of the back end stuff, the things you were talking about how the learning environment extends beyond the space. And that's, if we really want to dive into these ecosystems, that's going to be the case. And I think it is going to be interesting with the zero trust architecture that so many of us are going to find ourselves in. Room systems are going to be a lot easier to get into that type of system, I feel like, because they're going to pay to get that taken care of, to get everything certified and everything up to date and on the same wavelength, and then it'll go through.
I think you're right. That will drive a lot of that.
We have 30 or so of these rooms, and I already see the amount of time support deals with all the BS on it. I want to remind everybody the scale of this issue if these types of rooms took over your standard classroom. Because right now, I'm probably the one on this call that has the most of these rooms, probably, out of all of us. And I don't
the
even
learning
deal with the
space,
support
probably.
tickets that other people do in the learning space areas, right? So if you scale that out to widely most of your rooms or everything, that could be a big problem.
It can be. And I think you're highlighting a very specific problem, is that transitional period when you have some of this and not all of this. That's going to me, that's a daunting task. Like, okay, I want to have ubiquitous versions of this out there, but it does create this, are we this type of school, right? Are we a blue school or a red school? Does it create that environment like that it becomes part of your identity? And I think it will, unfortunately. Right now we're saying, oh yeah, we are a insert your LMS of choice school here. I think this will tie into that type of conversation as well. And so, but yeah, going back to the different pieces, like looking at it, there's something about some of that ease in here and not having to have all this Tron stuff and all this weird stuff. And the partnerships I'm seeing with manufacturers are pretty deep right now. And much of it's like 90% of stuff I already use, right? And so it's not that much different. The touch panel thing might be the different thing. And arguably, am I in an environment where I even need the touch panel anymore? And so it is allowing me the opportunity to rethink what may be possible in a teaching and learning environment. And we should all be looking for things and opportunities to rethink and challenge ourselves to try those different things. I'd say if you're not doing it, sandbox it. That's me on my soapbox here. So
There's a lot of maybes and possibilities in there. A lot of maybes.
I'm trying. I want it to be a thing. If it can make my life easier and give us better real-time data, then why not?
I don't know if it's going to make your life easier. It's going to change problem X to problem Y, and depending on the scale, it's going to scale out. That's what the issue is. You're going to have different problems.
There will be hurdles and roadblocks and speed bumps along the way for sure. But is it not at least interesting to think of it differently? I mean, we should all be willing to say, oh, you know what? That's neat. Let's think about that.
And we thought about it and we did it. I want to go back and undo it.
I think you jumped early trying to solve a specific health concern thing that happened, and I don't know if it necessarily was done the correct way.
Well, no, it wasn't because of that. We started that venture before COVID. It was to replace our old ITV model. We were looking for an ITV replacement to continue ITV service. That's exactly what the problem is. Yeah, we're continuing an old teaching style is the reason why we have these rooms.
Gotcha.
And I am intrigued, and I have looked several times at installing rooms system of some sort. Mostly, but I haven't found the right place or the right application. The one application in a classroom, in a learning space that I have, the disconnect between the end user client and the rooms client and the difference in how it all operates has caused so many headaches just even explaining it to people that it's a no-go. The fact that you start telling people, well, and I know these are today's problems. Well, in order to share your content, you have to share. So you have to open up the same thing on your local machine in order to share to this other machine that is 6.5 inches away, or the touch panels are different, or the user interfaces, and some of the back end stuff is more labor intensive than the front end things. That's today. I'm intrigued by it. I have not found a way for it to scale into a learning environment, and I also find that most of the tools are made for small group sessions. They are not made for most learning group sessions. And I find that instructors don't like any of them because the tools they would like to use aren't the same or aren't usable. So our metrics are now skewed by who's using what. Well, is it because they have to? Because that's the only option? That's like if your metric said, well, everybody uses the dot cam. Well, that's because it's the only thing there, and they take the camera and point it at the laptop screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
That's my
technically, I have
strategy.
100% usage.
Dot cams are super
I know that's an
important.
extreme example, but I do like the idea of having a central service area. I do like having the idea of easily replaceable consumable parts, but I feel greasy, and I haven't even gotten into the engine yet.
Yeah, the concepts, I mean, I agree. The concepts are there. They're just not implemented correctly, and it's hard to scale out with all of the
I gotta be honest,
stuff we all have on campus,
I'm paying attention to what you're going through, right? Because when Larry went through this a little while ago, we all sat back and we said, well, let's see how because let's face it, almost all of us are going, because most of these are contractual, and most of us aren't involved in signing said contracts. A lot of times we find out that we're doing it after the fact. It may or may not have happened for you, but I'm really interested because your arrangement is a little bit more collaborative than Larry's was, or some others of us will be. And I do want to know what is said. I do want to know how that experience goes. I do want to know how much input you had, and if they're open to changes and acceptance, because a lot of what we get from the salesman that calls us or the support person is, well, that's just what it is, and we have all this cool crap coming. I don't care about the cool crap. Fix what you have. Cool crap doesn't matter if I can't get audio. Well, but it's spatial audio. I just throw that away. I don't care. Just give me sound. I want to hear it.
I kind of close out my pitch here is that if you don't do something and you don't get involved, there probably won't be a formal invite for you to be at that table, right? And so
no, there won't be.
I was actually rather impressed that the business reached out and said, hey, we want to get into this vertical, into this teaching and learning vertical, and we want to know what it means to do it right. Can we have a conversation? Now, was there some sales? There was some sales. Could this work? I mean, we were honest. Well, no, that's not going to work. Okay, well, that's interesting. So what are your challenges? How can we be a partner to try to make this work right? And that's nice to know that we're not just being prescribed a business system to solve these types of things. And I will bring updates to the table and let people know how we go through this journey. But I'm cautiously optimistic.
And I think that's a different approach that I would be more open to investigating, is the conversation of, can we make this a viable thing, rather than this is the thing, figure it out.
You're doing
none
it.
of us like that,
Yes.
right?
That's a way different approach. And to your point, Mark, how you were approached versus how other people were approached, that's how you create buy-in. Correct. So we didn't really have buy-in. We were just forced to do this, and then it's all blah.
And then it is what it is.
Yeah.
I want to bring us to a close. We do need to wrap here. I want to summarize a few things here that I've heard some people say, but also some thoughts I have, positive and negative, but mostly positive. So maybe I'll just couch these as suggestions to these companies who are pushing these sorts of solutions. Step one, or recommendation number one, not step one, but recommendation number one, get away from the one-size-fits-all solutions. Just because you make a solution that works great for an 8-person conference room, do not try to tell me, do not blow smoke up my ass, and I'll say that directly. Do not blow smoke up my ass about this will work in your lecture hall. I'm not saying that the platform doesn't have a way to do that, but telling me the same exact little box with built-in, microphone in the touch panel sort of thing is the same. No, knock it off. I'm not an idiot, so but cool it with that. Also, cool it with the cloud pushed updates. I get it. It's cloud connected. Oh, you get the most security updates whenever you need them, et cetera, et cetera. Except when you jack with things like audio settings and don't tell people, and then suddenly I get calls because the thing that was working fine yesterday got a cloud pushed update to the compute, and now the audio sounds different because it's in a new mode, or they've rewritten their algorithm. So
we didn't do anything, Chris. We just pushed some updates.
There was so we didn't make any changes. We just ran an update. Now all of us are in robust enterprise environments where we have lots of devices that we support remotely, and we push those updates on an as needed basis in a deliberate timetable, or we schedule those maintenance windows or whatever. So that's the model they need to follow. The computers, the desktop computer experience is already in that. If we're using desktop computes in the same sort of scenario as a dedicated appliance, why don't we follow that same model? Anyway, just a thought there. Jamie, I think you brought it up that the room client for these and the desktop client have the same name, but operate very differently, regardless of what the salespeople will say. I also want to say in general, those of these companies, because there are huge consultancies and we see it on Twitter and LinkedIn and stuff all the time, the salespeople who are pushing this stuff based on their experience, having never left their house in the last 3 years, using a one-off appliance that sits on their desk and telling me how great this thing is, I don't care. The person is not living in reality. So, but I will agree that the early deployments of these systems soured a lot of people on them because it was, for lack of a better term, half-baked, but a lot of them were pushed during COVID, even though, Justin, as you said, yours were prior to that. But a lot of them were pushed before, but then at that time frame. Yeah. They were pushed, right, but they were pushed quickly. Things kind of didn't work as well, so it soured us. That said, we were kind of discussing that because we don't have the sheer amount of selection of devices or types of equipment that would make the most sense in these various scenarios. That said, I'm going to say blanketly, and I don't know if anyone here is going to disagree with it, but maybe you will. Blanketly, our systems, and I say the higher ed AV vertical, our systems are probably too complex now anyway. So maybe this is an opportunity to streamline some of that. I know a lot of people, I see these on listservs and things all the time. I need a new classroom. They start with, go get me that giant 4RU all-in-wonder $6,000 box from whatever Tron you like, because they all make it. That's not the place you want to start with your classrooms. If you're still doing that like it's 2011 or 2012, it's probably time to look at some newer stuff out there. Just want to throw that out. So maybe moving to a room system like this is also an opportunity to rethink how we deploy our systems. And finally, a suggestion for these the room system, not manufacturers, the product people for this. They need to engage with the professional AV community, and I don't mean salespeople. I need get some SMEs, put some advisory groups together, get some engineers, some best practices, because we've heard from multiple people on this call. Hey, I talked with X, Y, and Z about element size and farthest viewer, and they all played dumb as if they'd never heard it before. And we know that's not true. So they're ignoring it because what they're saying to you is, oh, that's interesting. We'll look into it. And we're just going to go do it our way anyway. There are established standards for visual acuity, for being able to hear in a space and getting contrast ratios right. All that stuff, there's, all this work, and they're ignoring it because it's easier to deploy it this way. Why not engage with the AV community and put together some advisory groups and say, hey, here's version 3 of our platform, and here are the 7 or 12 or 15 people who are on the committee or the advisory committee. You may look at that and go, I know 3 of those names. Maybe we're getting somewhere. So because I think these are going to come anyway. We need to get out in front of it and be Mark, to your point, be partners with it, not fight against it. But at the same time, I think they also need to meet us halfway on some of these things. Or let's say meet us like a third of the way. I'll take it. If they give them a third of the way, I'll take that as a win. So
acknowledging there's
any last thoughts on the challenges of room systems? Otherwise, I'm going to push a button. Nope.
I think the main point here.
Oh, go.
Yeah, push the button. I think push the button anyway. I think the main point here is that IT people are designing AV, and it's like this IT AV battle, and we're like, hey, don't forget about the analog space and acoustics and the experience in the room. And I think we're just seeing a different variant of the IT AV battle here, in my opinion.
But is this the only way they know to acknowledge that they need help in this part of it? Like, they're not gonna.
I don't think they want to acknowledge they need help.
AV folks, like, we need your help. Like, it's not going to happen that way.
It's a very IT focused, and I mean that in the most pejorative sense. It's a very IT focused method of, well, I ran it on my computer and it ran fine, so thus it's okay, and they push it. It's that sort of thing. So
exactly.
I am going to push the button.
This is their way of asking for help. Go. Push it. Get us out of here.
It's a cry for help. Button.
Hey y'all, I've got this new show I got to tell you about. It's called AVSF Live. That's LIVE ! First off, all you need to do is go to avsf.live.live, not .com, not .net, but .live. Yes, it's a website, does work. We're going to try out this new live video thing. It's probably going to go over like a hair in a biscuit. You got to check it out. Come to the tweeters and look us up on LinkedIn to find out more information. We'll see y'all soon.
All right, so for our final segment, this one we have a little more fun with. I think somebody raised this a while ago. I don't know who started the conversation, but like, honestly, frankly, what's the most expensive thing we've ever broken? We deal with a lot of electronics, a lot of like pricey stuff. And I think we've all, over our careers, broken something pretty big.
How much is my pride worth, Chris? What is my pride worth? Because I think I've broken that several times.
My man, you're like a toddler in the liquor store. Everything's broken.
So, so why don't we go around the horn? Mark, we'll start with you.
Right,
what's your most expensive thing that's been broken
this year? In the last. Oh man, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples, and you guys can pick where you want to go. I may or may not have dropped projectors from ladders. Maybe I may or may not have allegedly dropped speakers from ladders.
Like people come
allegedly,
to speak,
somebody says they remember. Most recently, a sharp piece of metal, like it goes over a track system. I may and or may not have turned around and gashed an LCD screen, a large 75-inch on a wall. Maybe that happened. Maybe. So average that all, and this is like in the last 5 years, probably. So guilty. I mean, I bricked a lot of things too, but that's who's counting.
Yeah, I think we mean hardware, like inadvertent hardware destruction. So I'm happy to go. I remember one, it was about 10 years ago or so. We were taking an 80-inch panel off the wall. And these 80-inch panels at this point were very big and heavy and also very rare. And it was me and I think 3 students were there, and we had plenty of people who wanted to make sure, et cetera. We were being so careful, and we lifted that thing up off the mount and got it down and put it up. We were very careful, set it off to the side, and we're good. And then we're taking the mount off the wall, and brilliant me put one of the horizontal supports for the mount down, leaning it against the wall, and then turned to continue to take the mount off the wall, only to watch that thing slowly tip over and swing down at full speed right into the screen of the 80-inch LCD that we had been so careful to save, and that thing was broken pretty good. So, lots of that sort of like turning and smacking into things, just hitting doorways with stuff.
On that? What's your dollar price?
On that monitor or just in total?
Yeah, roughly. Rough to mid. Give me a rough to mid here.
But I mean, for that or for everything?
No, just that one.
Oh, just that one? I don't know. 80-inch monitor 10 years ago, what, $8,000 maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, probably then. You're probably right. Okay, cool.
All right, so I had a friend of mine, or my peer at the time. We do a lot of weird garbage. Our networking crew, Cisco just gives away codecs sometimes. Well, our networking crew got one of the latest and greatest, it's their trial thing. And the latest and greatest,
there, whatever it is,
and then they just bill you for it.
Yeah, whatever it was. It was the top of the line.
Service contract for $1 million.
Our CIO was like, "You're going to use this," and we're like, "Fine." So we were starting to test it, and I think with the touch 10 and the thing and everything else, it coming in at that $15,000-$16,000, and so we're starting to test it. And we had it plugged into one side of the room, and we had its secondary component plugged into the other side of the room. And then they have to connect. And when we connect it, the whole thing, all 3 items smoked. We were like, whoa. Poof. Well, we discovered that my side of the room is on a different circuit than his, and we just smoked this thing with 220. And we had to go back to the CIO and be like, well, I don't know what you want to do about this.
I don't know what happened, but. It was
like this when I got here.
It was a good one too. I mean, I've smoked a lot of things, but this one was real smoke, almost to the.
Wait, what?
Are we gonna
Is it
set off the
college
alarms?
or what are you talking about?
What
kind of things are you smoking,
We threw
boy?
2 separate breakers. Oh, it was great. It was a good one.
All right. Justin,
So
what about you?
mine-
I'm sure you've
Me?
or
Larry? Go, Larry.
Larry's already going. Larry goes.
I was going to go. Yeah. So mine, the equipment itself wasn't expensive, but I was in one of the high rises in downtown Chicago on Wacker Drive. And so we were in the CIO suite, like just doing their new high-end conference room with one of those $10,000 tables or whatever. He had a custom built-in that we were putting speakers in. And I was traveling at the time with Brian Meyer, who's a listener to the show, and we were doing this install. It was my first time doing the DSP configuration, and my first time doing it, I routed the AEC reference to the speakers, and the nice custom built-in wall unit immediately made the worst noise ever when I turned the system on. Ended up blowing, I think, 2 of the speakers and delayed the entire project by about 3 or 4 days while we waited for the new speakers to come in. So yeah, the equipment wasn't expensive, but the time was. Yeah.
Okay.
So mine,
Speakers.
I haven't really broke a whole lot of things. I broke a Logitech camera. I think it was a Rally camera or something. Updated the firmware on it directly off their website. Broke and called them. They said, "Oh, you used the wrong firmware." It's like, "Got it from your website." "Oh, you grabbed the wrong firmware. You got to grab this other firmware." Okay, so they sent us a new one. Updated the firmware on the new one. And then it activated motion tracking and couldn't figure out how to turn it off, so we just ditched the camera anyway. But I have been electrocuted or shocked quite a bit.
Like you ditched it out in the woods somewhere? Just
yeah, I just threw it out in the woods and
walked
set
away.
fire to it. Yeah. But I'm mostly known for just getting shocked on ladders. Yeah, I've had a lot of brain injuries from getting shocked and electrocuted on ladders and sometimes getting blown off on ladders. But it happens.
But I'm more interested in kind of like the reaction. Do any of you go into like a panic state when something is broken, or do you just kind of just roll with it? Because I think people new in their career
The first couple of times, the first couple of times.
Yeah.
After a while, you're just kind of like, whoops.
Yeah.
People say I'm pretty crass about the whole thing. And they're just like, man, you just asked for another one and just carried right on. Didn't even care. I was like, I can't change what happened. It happened. We got to move on.
What are you
Get the job
do?
done.
Just dwell on it? You just got to move on, man.
So, I mean, should you feel sorry for a product that breaks? I don't know.
I think you have to look at it from the human standpoint. These things are going to happen. If you drop so look at it this way. Let's say you are setting up a new classroom, your normal classroom, and you drop the computer monitor, which is what, a 22-inch or 24-inch thing that costs about $130. Who cares? You're just like, we've got 40 of these. You have to kind of use that same attitude on the other stuff, because to your point, it's broken. What are you going to do? You can't like hide it. You can't undo it.
You're going to cry.
So the best thing you can do is, the best thing you can do is move on. If you have to order a replacement or whatever it is, and I guarantee whoever you go talk to about it, you're the next one in line, that whoever your supervisor, manager, director, whoever, has probably also done things like that. When we bricked that entire server and took out all this stuff, that it happens. Nobody is perfect. And then it's amusing to go back and talk about. So it's at some point, yes, everyone is going to drop the big dog 20,000 lumen projector, and it's going to like damage a seat. And you watch, the university is more upset that one of their seat backs is damaged than the fact that you tumbled this projector down the aisleway. So
I want to hear what other people have done though. If you've done some weird stuff, send it in. Hit it on X or Twitter and tag us on it. Like, what's the thing you broke during an install, and then we'll see how far off we are. And did you
Larry,
feel
I think
sorry
this is a good
about
thing for a what are we calling them now? An X poll. Go on to X and post a poll. Something. So, all right. Well,
it happens, man.
Anyone want to admit anything else they've destroyed? Otherwise, I'm going to push another button and we're going to roll out of here.
Oh, there's too many.
No, all right.
Not unless we want to talk high school and college stories, but I'm not going to.
No, I don't
only
think.
Destroyed in a different world, right? Different life.
Attorneys advise not to talk about that.
Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients. This is why we've been recording this whole time. So Marc has to edit all this shit out.